a practical question with a request for maybe a tip. And I've been listening to the Vortex, and there's a lot in there that helps with this. But even today, I'm sort of, I got a phone call from my mother asking where I was, why I wasn't at work. And I didn't want to get into the whole thing. Well, you see, there's these non-physical beings and infinite intelligence. Click. So, but what I find more so than...
Well, Mom, there's a lot going on in my life experience, and my expansion is just really palpable. And every now and again, I get a lead on something that lets me really know who I am and why I was born. And I feel like I want to follow that out. And I've been studying successful people in history, and I've discovered that that's a trait that they all have. Instead of locking themselves into mechanical responses to life, they intuitively begin to follow the impressions that they receive. And I believe that I'm guided, Mom. Don't you believe that you're guided? And don't you want to know that I am? Don't you want to know that well-being is what's really laid up for us? And don't you like it when you get on the track for that? So I just followed my nose today, Mom, and I found something that's really beneficial. I had the most glorious experience realizing that all things are working out for me. What, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
I do say those things, and she's resistant to it. But what I want to know, there's no winning that one.
But here's the reason that we express that to you is because, and this is bigger than you know, as someone disapproves of you, and you have some choices. You take the hit. You can say, well, they're not wrong. They're not right. They don't know what they're talking about, which is still outside the vortex. Or you can sort of fight with them a little bit about it and try to win your point, which just holds you outside the vortex. The reason that we said the words to you that we did is because we want you to, in your own privacy and in your own mind and in your own way, practice the vibration of what you know. Because when that's the vibration that's dominant, then somebody who doesn't get it doesn't call you and ply you with questions. The only reason they call you and ply you with questions is because you're still feeling guilty about not pleasing them. There has to be something active in your vibration, otherwise you're not getting that. So one of the things that we have come to that we really want to express in a way that you really, really get it. And we laid the basis of understanding for this as we were talking about these trillions of cells in your body who know what they don't want and know what they do want. We want you to feel with us when Jesus is the example that comes to mind most in this culture, but there are many others, stood before you as you were dripping your illness. He saw it not. He was tuned to the wellness of your being. He was tuned to your vortex, your vibrational vortex. He practiced it when you weren't there. He practiced it when you were there. He knew the well-being of your being. So when you visited with him or when you stood before him, he knew it so well that you knew it too. In other words, he dominated vibrationally. That's what true knowledge is, you see. So the only reason that we wanted to say to you what you know, even though your mother isn't ready to hear it, is that the more you know it, if each time she argues with you about the direction of your life, and instead of arguing back, you take the bounce and remind yourself who you are and practice that vibration until it's just emanating, just oozing, just radiating from you. What begins to happen is that those well-meaning people around you that cannot hear your words, you're right, she cannot hear those words, but she can feel, because there isn't anybody on this planet that wants your well-being more than you, but the next one in line is your mother. Seriously, even though she can't see it because she's not been practicing the vibration of it, she wants it. It's what's in her vortex. The improved, successful, thriving, joyous, happy version of you is what's in her vortex. It is our absolute promise to you. So when you've worked to line up with that, so that that's what you're emanating this confident clarity, we promise you, she is going to know it from your knowing it. In other words, that's what we meant earlier when we were saying withdraw the fists and withdraw the words and just own your alignment. In the same way that when you're on stage and you own your alignment and the audience all gets it, it's exactly the same thing. When you own your alignment, everyone who interacts with you gets it, and law of attraction delivers them to you at the time when they do get it, and doesn't deliver them to you at the time that they don't get it. Teach with your mind, teach with your vibration, teach with your own knowing. Because do you know the majority of teaching that goes on is just like the affirmation cards that we were mocking, even though we wrote them? When people are outside the vortex, that's when they want to do all their talking and all their convincing and all their pigeonholing and cataloging. And it's just sort of like, really, we love you very much. Blah, 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 blah. But when you get into the vortex, where the energy that creates worlds is radiating through you, you broadcast well-being with such significant power that no one can deny it. In other words, it just doesn't, their opinions just do not matter, because your opinion is all powerful, you see. That's the only reason that we would ever encourage you to talk back to your mother.
Well, on the way, I fully understand that. On the way to this all-knowing and being in the vortex and being in tune with yourself, on the way there's these bumps along the road, these challenges, and what is the best way to deal with those around you that insist on complaining or judging or doing these things that you don't really want to focus on, but they're being thrust in you, and you know that, if your vibration was, if you were in the vortex, it wouldn't be coming at you, but you're not yet in the vortex. Do you just endure it? Do you say yes, okay, because you don't want to, because if you say I don't want to listen to that right now, that they think you're rude, or you don't care.
The first thing that happens is an awareness. Esther had a conversation on the telephone with someone recently who was really wanting to get her point of view across to Esther. And Esther realized, and Esther had a different point of view. And as Esther listened, Esther realized that with every word that Esther uttered, it just got bigger. There was no way that this was there was no way this conversation was going to come to a conclusion that was going to please anybody. It was like, and so Esther is looking at Jerry and going, like, what do I do? And Jerry can't hear the other end of it, so he doesn't really know what's going on. And we said to Esther, hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. In other words, do anything you can do to stop this conversation. Not because the other person is wrong and you are right, but that this is not going in the direction that is going to be pleasing. And Esther couldn't do it. She handed the phone to Jerry and he didn't know what to do with it, and he hung it up because he didn't know where it was at. So what we're getting at here is, as you understand that withdrawal from unwanted. Now, people worry about that because they feel that they must defend themselves. But think about the exact words that we are using. There is this vortex that you are allowing or resisting. And if you're allowing it, it's the path of least resistance. So the path of least resistance is whatever it takes not to confront, you see. That's what we really mean that when we say bring back the fist. Now, there are a lot of people even in this room that say, but come on, don't we need to stand up for ourselves? Won't we be a doormat? And we want you to understand that if you're all outside the vortex and inside the vortex is off the table of discussion and you want to win, then you better get big and strong and you better be able to beat them all up. And that's the game you play in. Let's call it the out of the vortex game, where brute force and good debate is really where it's at. But one who's in alignment is millions of times more powerful than those who are not. So if you make the decision that you want to connect with your true power, that you want to connect with who you really are, and further, you can't be joyful unless you do that, then it makes you willing to just let those things go by the wayside while you collect yourself inside the vortex. There are so many people who will convince you that you owe them an explanation. You owe them an explanation. But they don't just mean that. They mean you owe me the explanation that I want to hear. That's what and I'm not going to let you go until you say what I want to hear from you. And so what are your options? In other words, do you want to deny who you are? And this is really a big issue. It's the reason it runs so deep within so many of you, because the day you were born, you had a guidance system that people on the planet around you, mostly outside the vortex already, were saying to you, in order for me to feel good, you need to do these things. And so right away, almost all children look to their parents and teachers, and when they're smiling, then that's good, and when they're frowning, then that's bad. In other words, and they give up their own relationship to their own vortex by letting themselves try to please this one and this one and this one and this one. But then the longer you live, the more you realize that they're all fickle and they all want different things from you, and it just drives you crazy. In other words, the longer you live, the more you realize that something is missing if you're not in alignment with who you are. So we're just suggesting in as strong a way as we can that when you finally get it, that you're not going to feel good unless you're in alignment with who you are. But the big benefit, we know it's a big price to pay. I have to pay the price of joy in order to find my power. That's really what we're talking about. You have to pay the price of consistent joy and happiness and appreciation and alignment in order to really come into your true power. And when you are in your true power, then it's not difficult for your life to go well for you, because first of all, law of attraction's not matching you up with things that don't match it. And in your desire to teach, and that's what happens to so many of you, you're a teacher, and so students come. And when students come, lots of teaching goes on. In other words, we don't know, in the conversation that we were just offering about Esther hanging up, we would not begin to say that the other person was wrong, or that the benefit of the whole thing was all Esther's doing. In other words, we so want everyone to understand that when there is a problem that is formulating, there is a solution that is formulating too. And what makes you want to sort of break away from those that are still beating the drum of the problem is that you're ready to move on to the solution, and often they're not, you see. And you just can't move on to the solution while you're beating the drum of the problem. You have to let it go. Helpful?
Very. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed.